There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and happy birthday Crypto. I hope you had a good night. I hope you had a good crypto night. This is a birthday tag for Crypto of the Codex Cantina, a very competent and entertaining chapel. Chapel? It's not a chapel, it's whatever the opposite of a chapel is. Channel. Two dudes chatting about lit, doing the deepest dives I've ever seen on BookTube. They can do 40 minutes on a short story. If that's your bag, even if that's not your bag, you just have to watch them. They're fun, funny, and they can take it as much as they can give it out, which is what I always like in a macho booktuber, or a pair of macho booktubers. Anyway, happy birthday, Crypto, and happy on-birthday, Una. So here is the tag. It's called the We Ain't Getting Younger book tag. An original tag, I assume created by Una, but I don't know, or collaboration, but it's his Crypto's 40th birthday. I can hardly believe that. Before I start commenting on physiques, let's just get to the prompts, shall we? Number 1. While it's proven too many birthdays can kill you, the amount of cake we can eat is still under debate. Name the most recent book that gave you a sugar/book high. I don't really know what a sugar high is, but I assume it's just a feeling of elation, an intense rush of sugar, and so for a book, just a really strong positive reaction. The one that I would choose for that is a very recent read, Lawrence Durrell's Justine. This is the first in a quartet of novels called the Alexandria Quartet, and I loved it with all my heart. It was for Memento Mori-a-thon. It was as meta as a Memento Mori-a-thon buddy read can be, because I did a buddy read of this with Memento Mori, Adam, and it was my first Lawrence Durrell novel, and I am going to continue because I loved it. It's Proustian without being nauseous. Can I put it that way? It's not overdone, but it's very perfumey prose and very wispy, hard to pin down tale of a bunch of friends that are falling in and out of bed with each other in, I don't remember when it was, the 1950s perhaps? Alexandria. The setting, Alexandria, is as important. In fact, an argument could be made, and in fact I think Lawrence Durrell makes it on pretty much every page, that Alexandria itself is the main character. I got a real sugar high from this. Fabulous. Number 2, sometimes we get older and wider. Come on, I'm feeling personally attacked. Sometimes we get older and wider instead of older and wiser. Name the longest book you've ever read. Well, I'm not a size queen. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to lie in this video. But I'm pretty sure the biggest book I ever read is the medieval. Was medieval the right? I don't know if medieval is the right adjective. Written around the year 1000. Japanese novel. The first novel ever written. The Tale of Genji, attributed to Murasaki Shikubu, but nobody really knows who wrote it. It probably was written by women. And I did this as like a... Britta, how long was that buddy read? About 10 years? 10 weeks? Something like that. Buddy read with Britta Bowler, and I enjoyed the buddy read. I found a lot to hate about this, but also a lot to love, and I'm happy to report that now... Has it been a year since we read it? Almost a year? Something like that. That I'm remembering more of what I loved than what I didn't like. It's very misogynistic in places. It's also has a few stunningly feminist moments, and when it's not being horrifically rapey, it's got some homoerotic moments that I quite enjoyed. It's a mixed bag, and it's a big mixed bag. What's a bag-like thing that's bigger than a bag? I don't know. It's a satchel. No, I don't know. So, yeah, that's it. Oh, Sean, what have you been smoking? I haven't been smoking anything. I live in Japan. You go to prison for like 100 years if you smoke a joint in this country. Number 3. The best part about pictures is that they're always a younger version of you. Name a book that you enjoyed more the first time you read it than the second. Or if you've never reread, why not? I do a little bit of rereading, and I have one that fits the bill perfectly for this tag, and that is the Western Canadian and classic novel Sinclair Ross's As For Me and My House. Originally published, I believe, 1945, and I read it the year it came out. No, I'm not that old. 1941. Originally published 1941. It didn't make much of a splash when it was published, but is now a Canadian classic, and I believe that I studied it twice. Once in high school and again in university. and I remember loving it. Sinclair Ross was a closeted gay writer from Saskatchewan. He was born about an hour and a half away from where I grew up. He died late 1980s as a very old man, and then his lover wrote a memoir that kind of outed him. But there's a lot of homoeroticism in his fiction. I didn't like this the third time I read it. Last year, I believe, or maybe the year before, I was quite disappointed. And yeah, I was really underwhelmed by it, and I found it too gothic-y. And the story's set in a small town with a minister and his wife. A minister's wife and her husband. Let's give due credit to the protagonist, who is the minister's wife. And it's in the form of a journal. It's an unhappy marriage, and they're not happy in that rinky-dink little town. It's a very glum tale, but I thought certain atmospheric detail was overused to the point where I was just rolling my eyes. So I don't know if I was in a bad mood that month, because I remember loving it, and a lot of people who have read it in the last decade were horrified that I didn't like it. Yeah, it's very popular. But you know what? I have talked about this on a tag in the last year. I don't remember which tag. That sometimes if I don't like the font of a book, I don't like the book. And I worry about how susceptible I am to the small stylistic things like that. This one, there was no problem with the font, but this is a secondhand copy I picked up a couple years ago for the purpose of rereading it, and the pages are really yellowed, and so I thought, would that have put me off? Am I that superficial in my subjective experience of a literary text that yellowing pages would turn me off of books? I've been kind of worried about that, so I'm happy to report that much more recently, I have been reading 2 books that are also similarly yellowed pages and loving them. So it wasn't that. But I think I'm going to have to reread it for a 4th time in a year or 2 and see if I can regain my previous love for this Canadian classic. Wow, that was pretty long. Second glass of wine. Happy birthday, Crypto. Number 4. As you get older, you must learn to never skip a bathroom break before jumping in a car ride. Name a book you read in very few sittings. Have you ever walked to the bathroom holding the book and then blindly fumbled for the door handle? That question is far too personal. So I have to admit, I struggled with this one because more and more as I develop or regress as a reader, I am in favor of slow reading. So even a novella, like a 100-page novella, I don't want to read it in any shorter time period than a month. So that's kind of where I'm at. But another annoying thing about my reading life is that I don't worry about my totals. I don't even talk about how many books I read in a year because I just think that's gross. For me, other people can do whatever they want. But I care personally, and so I was going to beat my personal best. In the last 3 days of 2019, I polished off 3 very short books. And one of them was over 2 days, and I must say that if I'd read it more slowly, I would remember more. But because I reviewed it in detail to make a review, which I'll link below, it has stuck with me. But for the most part, I'm not a big fan of reading anything in one sitting. It was this Russian collection of 2 novellas. The book calls them novellas. They're barely novellas. They might be 2 long short stories. 2 Princesses by Vladimir Odevsky, translated from the Russian by Neil Cornwell. In this attractive edition, they republish kind of little-known classics, if that's not an oxymoron. Hesperus classics. And these were fabulous. You know how much I love princesses. Really good. I don't want to make this video unnecessarily long by telling you why I liked it. You can check out my review, but I did read this in 2 days. Number 5. Don't let old age get you down, because it's harder to get you back up these days. Name a book you had to put down and why. How much time do you have? I am the Empress of Bailing, so this is my I'm in my element here. Yeah, I bail on more books in a year than lots of people read, and I'm not bragging. Yes, I am. I'm bragging. I'd say at least 50% of what's published is shit, and I have no time for shit. I was surprised that I bailed on this German literary classic from the late 19th century, I believe. Theodor Fontaine's Effi Briest. Because it was such a terrible novel, I just don't care about any of the pronunciation. It was so boring. It had so much potential. Middle-aged mother's ex-boyfriend pays a call to her and asks for her 17-year-old daughter's hand in marriage, and the marriage is arranged, and I don't know if she was 17, but she was a very young woman, and then she goes off to live with the aforementioned maternal ex-boyfriend, her new husband, and as they're getting to know each other, I just kept thinking, do these people have bodies? Like, it was so remote, and everything was, there was just a layer of lacquer that was preventing anything that was visceral from being exchanged, and I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It was so heady. So heady. Ugh. So that's how I felt about that one. I didn't put that one down. I flung it across the room. Number 6. Age isn't how long you've been alive, it's how many lives you've lived. What book genres have you been wanting to try outside of your comfort zone? I'm feeling personally attacked again, Una and Crypto. I don't have a good answer for this. At my most blunt, I just say I hate all genre fiction. I am only interested in literary fiction. It's a little bit more complicated, but not much. I do like to maybe once every 2 years try something. Like the other day I tried a romance novel. Didn't go well, people. Didn't go well. But yeah, so literary fiction and a little bit of nonfiction, usually about literary writers or something to do with literature. And that's what I'd like to read. So yeah, no thank you. Genre fiction, not my bag. But I do have an answer for this in some of my nonfiction reading. And I talked about this on the Read Doris tag recently. There is a work of historical scholarship about Saskatchewan, where I grew up in Canada, about the clearing of the land and the decimation of the indigenous peoples that populated it, that was like genocidal, that I've had on my shelf for years, and I'm finally ready to read it. I will be doing a buddy read of this starting late next month with Jay Shea. With things going on in Canada pre-COVID-19, the indigenous populations have been militating, and I have had a bit of an awakening. I mean, I was always armchair supportive, and I'm still not doing anything about it other than I just think that Canada sucks because of what we've done. Canada was a bad idea at the beginning and is just an ongoing act of cultural and literal genocide, and I need to know more about it. So this book is Clearing the Plains. The subtitle is very long. Disease, Politics of Starvation, and the Loss of Aboriginal Life by James Dashik, a Saskatchewan historian. It's outside my comfort zone because I was attracted to it but kind of repelled. You know, I grew up on a farm, and probably 20 or 30 years before my great-grandfather started farming there were indigenous peoples that were forcibly removed, if not murdered, so that our family could have a family farm for 100 years. Yeah, so this is outside my comfort zone, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to be a traumatic read for me as a settler Canadian in the process of waking up. Number 7, life gets worse the older you get. Luckily, you don't have much left. That's so optimistic. Thank you! I'm going to go jump off a bridge after I finish this video. Name a book that slowly turned sour for you, but you finished anyways. Were you glad you stuck it out? So I bail, usually if I lose interest for any reason, even just one bad sentence is enough for me to bail on a book, because life is too short. But occasionally, whether it's for a buddy read or because it's a book that many other people loved, or for certain reasons, I might finish a book and then I regret it. So these two, I regret having invested the time to finish them because they were awful, and this is my minority opinion, people. Aaron Daddy Roy's God of Small Things, I absolutely hated it. It was one of the worst books I've ever read, and I did finish it. There's a ranty review if you're interested. And Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, I loathed that book. It sucked so bad. I didn't do a ranty review because just a few weeks after I finished it, she's a wonderful writer. I think she wrote one good novel, Beloved, but anything else I've read by her I haven't been able to finish or didn't like, and this one was the worst. And I'm probably 1% of the reading population because everybody else just worships that book. I don't get it, people. I just thought the story was weird for no reason, just to be weird. It didn't need to be weird. It could have been a powerful novel, but it was purposelessly bizarre. Number 8. Peer pressure seems to decrease as you get older. Well, I really want the Codex Cantina guys to like me. Where did all your friends go? That's a good question. See above, Toni Morrison, Song of Solomon, etc. Name a book that you checked out because of peer pressure. Were you happy to have tried it? Well, I mean, I'm too old. Yeah, so yes, peer pressure. I'm getting more curmudgeonly in my old age. And even since I started on BookTube, I used to follow the prize list and do this and that and whatever people. And I much more trust my gut or bail more and more. But I ignore prize lists, and BookTube darlings usually suck as far as I'm concerned. So here's one that sucked and one that didn't. Sucked is too strong of a word, but I didn't drink the Kool-Aid about Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. I did it, I think I did it as a text audiobook combo. The audiobook had about 135 narrators. It was masterfully done. And I thought the opening of this novel about the grief-stricken President Lincoln and his dead son was just heartrending. And I loved the way so-called historical texts were quoted. You didn't know what you were reading that was historical scholarship and what was George Saunders' own prose, and that all worked for me. But then it just became this stupid operatic ghost story, and I don't care about ghosts. I don't feel anything about ghosts. So by the end I was disgusted. I finished it, wish I hadn't bothered. However, just like a stopped clock is right twice a day, occasionally the literary prizes accidentally award their prize to a good book or a masterful book, and that was the case with Milkman by Anna Burns, alongside the Hilary Mantel Cromwell trilogy. This is, hands down, not only the best thing to come out of the UK in the 21st century. Those 4 books, the Cromwell trilogy and this one, are the only masterpieces to come out of the UK in the 21st century. This was absolutely incredible! See, I can agree with the crowd when accidentally the crowd. Now, I don't want to talk about other booktubers that way, but I do like to diss book prizes because they're all very silly. All right, so that was a blast, guys. Number 9, friends don't let friends get older alone. Tag people. So I'm just going to tag a bunch of people that I would love to see do this. Heidi of My Reading Life, Karen of Run Right Reads, Heather of Soggy Expat Book Nerd, Jason of Byways and Bookland. You can do a satirical take on this. Yes, you can. Do a tag, Jason. Please, I want to see you do this. And Steve Donahue, of course. And anybody else who would like to do it, check out the Codex Cantina guys. They're an erudite riot. Thanks for watching.